It was just another quiet morning until everything went dark. No warning, no storm, just silence as the backup generator cut out. At first, I thought it was a mechanical glitch. But after checking the system, I found something that made my heart drop. The switch had been manually turned off. That backup generator doesn't just power a few lights or my fridge. It powers the nursing home behind my property. Elderly residents rely on that power for oxygen machines, heating, and basic care. And someone had just cut it all off on purpose. I didn't have to look far to figure out who was behind it. Our local HOA president, Karen, has had an issue with me and my generator for months. She's been complaining about the noise even though it's soundproofed and tried everything to get it removed. Her last message to the HOA board was, "That generator is ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood." But I never imagined she'd go this far. Disconnecting a power source without knowing, or worse, without caring what it's connected to. By the time I rushed to the nursing home to check, staff were scrambling, trying to keep patients calm and systems running. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just an overstep. It was dangerous. And when I confronted Karen, what she said next made my jaw drop. She had no idea what the generator powered, or at least that's what she claimed. Now I'm left with one big question. Was this ignorance ... or something worse? Because shutting off a generator is one thing, but putting lives at risk, that's another level. And trust me, things only got more intense from here. You won't believe what happened next and how this whole situation spiraled out of control. Karen moved into the neighborhood about a year ago, and from day one, she treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. Her main focus was enforcing rules that she twisted to her own liking. From mailbox heights to paint colors, nothing escaped her radar. But her obsession really started when she noticed my backup generator sitting behind the fence I'd installed it 3 years ago, long before Karen even lived here after a windstorm knocked out power and left the nearby nursing home struggling for hours. Ever since, the generator's been quietly running its regular tests every month, just in case. No complaints, no issues. Until Karen. She sent me formal notices, claimed it was unauthorized equipment, and even tried to fine me for excessive noise, which was ironic considering the generator's nearly silent and buffered by hedges. I tried reasoning with her, even offered to show her the zoning approvals and medical partnership with the nursing home, but she refused to listen. She said I was making excuses and trying to turn the neighborhood into a commercial zone. Nursing home staff knew me well by then. We'd worked out an agreement that in the event of a blackout, my generator would keep their most critical systems running while their internal backup kicked in. It was a safety net, not just convenience. And Karen, in her personal crusade, cut that lifeline without ever asking a single question. What's worse is that I found out she didn't even consult the HOA board. She acted alone, claiming emergency authority over the neighborhood's aesthetics. No warning, no permission. Just pulled the breaker and walked off like she'd fixed some huge problem. Now the neighborhood's split. Some people are backing her, thinking she did the right thing. Others are furious, especially after learning about the nursing home connection. But what nobody knows yet is what I found inside the generator box after it was shut down. When I opened the generator box, something didn't sit right. The disconnect wasn't just a flipped switch, was tampered with. The main power line had been pulled and left hanging like someone yanked it out in a rush. And worse, one of the grounding wires had been clipped. That wasn't a simple shutoff. That was sabotage. I took photos, documented everything, and immediately contacted the local inspector. The technician who originally installed the system confirmed that the damage couldn't have been accidental. Whoever did it knew just enough to make it stop. Working, but not enough to do it safely. Meanwhile, inside the HOA, word was spreading fast. A few of the board members, especially Marlene, volunteers at the nursing home, were livid. She started asking questions about who gave Karen the authority to touch private property, especially something connected to essential care. But Karen, she doubled down, claimed she was protecting the community from what she called an unapproved industrial setup. The fact that it could have endangered lives didn't seem to register with her. Then came the twist. I got an anonymous message slipped under my door. No name, just a folded note that said, "She knew. Check the security." Footage from June 3rd. I'd nearly forgotten I had a camera mounted on the back fence facing the generator, mostly for wildlife. I pulled the footage and my stomach dropped. It clearly showed Karen, mid-morning, walking right up to the generator, tools in hand. She looked around, paused, and then got to work. It wasn't quick or panicked, it was planned at the same time. A subplot began brewing with the nursing home's administration. They were furious not just at what happened, but at the potential legal risks. Their director called an emergency meeting, and here's the thing turns out Karen had sent them. A cease and desist letter just a week before, claiming that our power-sharing agreement violated neighborhood bylaws. She was trying to cut all ties, and the real reason why, still hidden. But I was getting closer. The more I dug, the more twisted it got. I found out that just 2 weeks before the generator incident, Karen had filed a proposal to the HOA board to rezone parts of the neighborhood, specifically the area where the nursing home sits. Her plan, converted into a quiet residential zone with strict limits on any non-residential utility use. On the surface, it sounded like a typical HOA overreach. But buried in the documents was something strange, a section that would allow the board president to override existing agreements with outside facilities if they disrupt neighborhood harmony. That clause didn't just target me, it was aimed directly at the generator and, by extension, the nursing home. I tried talking to the nursing home director again, and that's when she told me about a heated email exchange with Karen just days before the power was cut. Karen had threatened to report the facility for zoning violations if they didn't stop accepting my backup power. It was no longer just about noise or looks, it felt personal. Like Karen had some hidden motive she wasn't admitting to. Then, one of the board members, Todd, called me late at night. He said there was going to be a closed-door meeting to discuss disciplinary action against me for unauthorized equipment and endangerment. I was stunned. Somehow, Karen had flipped the story and was painting me as the reckless one. Todd said he didn't agree with her, but she'd gathered enough votes to put me at risk of fines, or worse, being forced to remove the generator entirely. The pressure was building from all sides. Neighbors were whispering. The nursing home was filing complaints, and Karen kept acting like she was untouchable. I knew if I didn't act soon, this whole thing could cost me everything, put more lives in danger. But I had one last card to play, and I was saving it for that HOA meeting. The night before the HOA meeting, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every Thinkeran's threats, the damaged generator, the anonymous note, and the footage. I was ready to present it all. But just as I was organizing my files, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. On the other end was a man who introduced himself as Chris, a former HOA board member who'd moved out 6 months ago. He'd heard through a friend that Karen was stirring things up again. And when I mentioned the generator, there was silence. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. She did the same thing to me. Chris explained that before leaving the neighborhood, he'd built a small solar-powered greenhouse in his backyard with full board approval. Karen had only just joined the HOA then, but she hounded him nonstop, eventually filing a complaint, with the county claiming his setup was an illegal structure. The inspection cleared him butt by then. Karen had turned the neighborhood against him with rumors and manipulated meeting minutes. He said it got so bad, he sold his house at a loss, just to leave. That's when it clicked Karen had a pattern. She wasn't just about the rules, she targeted people who challenged her authority. And now, I was next. Then came the final punch. Chris had something else emails. Old ones from Karen, sent from her personal account, complaining to a private real estate group. In one, she mentioned how properties near that medical facility were undervalued because of visible equipment and generator noise. She was planning to beautify the area, in her words, to increase property values. That's when I realized this wasn't about the generator or even the nursing home. This was about real estate. And if she got her way, the nursing home might not just lose power again, might be forced to shut down. The HOA meeting that night was packed. More residents than I'd ever seen showed up. Some curious, some clearly tense. Karen sat at the front, clipboard in hand, acting calm and confident, like she had everything under control. But I wasn't. About to let her spin the narrative again. When the time came for community comments, I stood up and asked to speak. She tried to brush me off, saying the topic had already been addressed, but the crowd murmured and the board agreed to give me 5 minutes. I started with the footage projected right onto the community hall wall. The room went silent as everyone saw Karen walk up to the generator, pull the wires, and walk away like nothing happened. Then I showed the emails from Chris, including the real estate message where she admitted her motive. Her face went pale. The room, once skeptical, suddenly shifted. Residents started asking questions. Why was she allowed to act alone? Who gave her permission to sabotage something tied to medical care? But just when I thought things had peaked, Marlene from the board stood up and dropped the final bombshell. She had quietly contacted the county, requesting copies of property records tied to Karen. Turns out, Karen's name was linked to a shell company that had just purchased a parcel of land behind the nursing home zoned for future residential development. If the nursing home were forced to shut down or relocate due to code violations or infrastructure problems, Karen's property would skyrocket in value. Gasps filled the room. Karen stood frozen, then quickly grabbed her things and tried to end the meeting early, but it was too late. A vote was called immediately, not just to strip her of HOA powers, but to launch a formal inquiry with the county. And as everyone filed out, still stunned, I received one last message from someone anonymous again. Just 5 words. You stopped her. For now. The days following the meeting were quiet, almost surreal. Karen never returned to another board session. A formal investigation was launched, and with the evidence in hand footage, emails, and testimony, she was officially removed from her HOA position. The shell company she was tied to backed out of the development deal after the exposure, and the zoning proposal she pushed so hard for was withdrawn entirely. The nursing home stayed open, fully supported by both the board and the community. And my generator remained right where it was tested, approved, and now better protected than ever. Several neighbors, including those who had once supported Karen, came by to apologize. They admitted they had no idea how deep it went. One even offered to help me build a more secure enclosure for the generator. What surprised me most was how the incident shifted the tone of the entire neighborhood. People became more aware, more involved, and finally understood the importance of transparency in HOA decisions. Chris, the former board member who tipped me off, ended up moving back into town with his wife. The board asked him to rejoin, and he agreed on the condition that they rewrite the community guidelines to prevent anything like this from happening again. That anonymous note still sticks with me. You stopped her. For now. Maybe it was just someone watching out, or maybe there's more beneath the surface I haven't seen yet. Either way, I've learned to trust my instincts, document everything, and never assume silence means safety. Because when power is abused, literally or figuratively, it affects more than just one home. It puts lives at risk. So yeah, HOA drama isn't always about paint colors or grass length. Sometimes it's about doing what's right even when it's uncomfortable, especially when people's lives are on the line.